What's good? Welcome to the Forever I Love Atlanta Sports Podcast edition of the Don's Favorite. It's your boy, the Don. I'm back again talking about general manager search for the Atlanta Falcons. Today we're going to focus on George Paton, the assistant GM for the Minnesota Vikings. I got an expert writer on for the Vikings. Edwin, how you doing this I know it's still morning for you over there in the Central Time Zone. This afternoon here on the East Coast.
Yeah, doing well. Thanks for having me on. Glad to talk about hopefully our still assistant general manager after this search because we want to keep him here.
Man, look, man. I know he tried to leave last year. He didn't like what Cleveland was doing, so he stayed. But also, man, look, we like to promote other people's stuff, so let everybody know where they can find your work. Because I know you got a podcast. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm co-host of the Scolders podcast. We release typically on Wednesday mornings, part of the Climbing the Pocket podcast network. So we have a show basically every day of the week, some live streams on YouTube, and we post up on Daily Norseman. So you can go to dailynorseman.com, check out our stuff there. Otherwise, we're on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. So come check us out, Scolders podcast.
Okay.
Great content. We like to push it, and we'll probably try to get you on when we play Atlanta next.
Hey, it looked like we may end up playing y'all again next year if we fall to what, third? Because right now y'all third in the division right now, right?
Yep, correct. Yep.
We finished third in the division, and if we somehow win another game or whatever, and the Panthers lose, then we'll be third, so we'll be playing y'all again. It's like almost every year we see y'all, so
yeah.
But thank you for coming on. Hey, if you're new to the channel, y'all already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, also hit that like button, share this content out with other Atlanta sports fanatics, and hit us up in the comment section. As always, come holler at your hometown sports podcast. All right. So, George Paton, talk to us about his philosophy, how he scout players, the players that that y'all look for. Because truth be told, you guys have identity up there of what style of football that y'all want to play. Unlike here in Atlanta, we really don't know what we want to do here in Atlanta, and this is why I feel like the general manager hire should be more important than the head coach.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of hard to untangle him from Rick Spielman. But what these guys have put together, they put together the kind of football that Mike Zimmer wants to have. I think having that relationship with the coach and understanding what the coach is looking for in the players helps you scout a lot. So when Zimmer got here, we started to flip towards more of that man press and that kind of corner and that kind of philosophy on defense. And we started to fill in with the way Zimmer wants to play. And like you said, having that GM on board first and having that identity being set by what your coach wants to run and being able to get those players that he can utilize and kind of turn into star players in a few years, that's huge. And if you've watched the Minnesota Vikings, I think Rick Spielman and George Paton, by extension of that, have done a very good job of finding those players that this coaching staff can utilize well and making them into stud players.
Yeah. Because for one, y'all got Bradbury, for instance. I love what I saw from him, and he was on the board, and y'all drafted him because he went in the first round, didn't he?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, because everybody was saying that he's a second round player, and I'm like, no, he's not, because it was him and Lindstrom to me, Chris Lindstrom. It was like 1 and 2.
Yep.
All right. And we grabbed Lindstrom in 2019 draft. And then the next guard was Bradbury. But Bradbury, he's more versatile. He can play that center as well. And he's playing center for you guys right now, right?
Correct, yeah. And that's another one of those things where on offense we kind of wanted to run this more zone scheme, which you need to have more athletic O-linemen. So we went out there, we got a Bradbury, we got Brian O'Neill, I believe the year prior to that. So both these guys very athletic, very very agile in space, and being able to tailor that to the new system that we're trying to run on offense is something that that front office has been able to do fairly well here. Now we still need a couple guards to complete the O line because it still has some issues, but yeah, just being able to find those guys, select those guys, and like you said, he was the number 2 guy that we had, and I was ecstatic when we drafted him.
Yeah, because I was like, man, if he's still there, and because I liked him, and I also like Dalton Risner. He's playing for
Mm-hmm.
Denver right now, but like that year, like the guards, like they were like packed, and
Yeah.
I tell people when you can draft and scout well, like trench guys, you pretty
Mm-hmm.
much going to win the draft no matter what. They're not sexy picks. They don't like say they're not like you get a quarterback or you get a receiver or some athletic um defensive back, but you need trench players. And this is why I like George Paton a lot because y'all drafted a lot of offensive linemen and defensive linemen that worked well with you guys. Not even mention the Xavier Rhodes, the Dalvin Cooks that y'all drafted.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the issue I have. The one thing that y'all haven't got right, and and this is I'm being critical right now, is drafting a quarterback.
Yep.
Y'all drafted Teddy Bridgewater. He did not work out for you guys. Y'all drafted Christian Ponder. He didn't work out for you guys. It's just tell me a little something about that.
Yeah, so and that's a very apt a point to make about this front office is we haven't had some success in certain areas, like not only just quarterback, but I think interior offensive linemen we've had some miss on. I mean, Bradbury is good as of late, but you look at the past 6-8 years, we haven't really had much success drafting guys that kind of stick in the interior line. But quarterback specifically, I think you mentioned it. Christian Ponder, I think a horrible pick by the time you actually look back on it. I think we took him at 12, and that's a massive reach for what he ended up being. Teddy Bridgewater, I mean, if he doesn't get injured, is he the Minnesota Vikings quarterback right now? I think there's a high chance that would be likely, but you can't plan for that. So I think maybe you get a 50-50 grade on that. But yeah, it's one of those things where if you can't draft the quarterback, you need to find one in free agency. And I mean, I hope we found one in Kirk Cousins, but he's not without his faults as well. So you guys having met Ryan for at least a couple of the years, pretty competent quarterback, pretty high end quarterback.
You sure
Maybe
about
might
that?
not be a big issue. Well, I mean, he
I'm
does fairly well.
I'm playing. I'm not playing devil's advocate right now. I just want to get your take. Right now. I'm just. You don't know which way I'm going right now. I'm not trying to. I let you know about
Mhm.
how I feel about Matt Ryan after you tell me how you feel about Matt Ryan. So, what's your honest opinion about Matt Ryan? Should the Falcons get rid of this guy and just draft someone this year? Like, just your honest opinion.
I wouldn't say you get rid of him because I think he's still a very proficient quarterback in the NFL. He's seen a lot. He understands a lot of coverages. He understands how to make adjustments. He understands a lot of these things. He's not without his shortcomings. Obviously, he's a less mobile quarterback. So if you don't have that trench to protect him and to keep that pocket clean, he's going to have issues for your football team. But um, I think you need to find the quarterback that's of the future, and you keep Matt Ryan for a year or two until you find that guy. And you just keep sinking picks into finding that new quarterback that can take over this team because you guys have some nice weapons there. You have some nice pieces on defense that you can work with. So I think just trying to plan a little more for the future better than the Vikings have, and who knows, maybe George Patton is a guy that really knows how to pick quarterbacks, but he's been overruled by Rick Spielman on some of these picks. We don't know. It's kind of hard to untwine those two.
Okay. Now, here's my honest opinion about Matt Ryan, and a lot of people who's tuning in right now or listening to me later, they know how I feel. Um, they feel like I give Matt Ryan a pass too much. And be that as it may, here's my take. It's hard to find quarterbacks. Okay, U.S. every year they come out. The guy Mel Kiper, he may say, "Well, this is a generational type of quarterback," and the dude come in the league and don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not ready to move on from Matt Ryan right now. I feel like the problem with the Falcons, and you can say you agree or disagree, has been coaching and play call.
And yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I mean, it's hard to find a consistent quarterback, and Matt Ryan is not the biggest problem of the Falcons, in my opinion. There are other parts to that need to change. It's very similar to the Viking situation. Before Kirk Cousins came here, we had not had a quarterback finish completely 2 full seasons all the way back to Frank Tarkenton in the 60s. So having a consistent quarterback that stays healthy and that can play at a top 10 stat wise level is you hang on to that, and that's why he's hung on so well in the league, is he's still able to do that.
All right, let's play Madden real quick. All right, let's say because I'm saying play Madden because some of these fans they think that you can just trade away players without like crippling your cap, and things like that. Like you can force trades. You can't force trades. It's not fantasy league. This is not a video game. But let's just play let's take it out of reality and let's play Madden. Let's say I trade Matt Ryan to you guys for a 3rd round pick. Would you take it?
No.
All right, why not?
Because right now we already have Kirk Cousins, and I think they're pretty close in production. So I would say no on that.
You sure about that?
I think so.
Now, I'm going to say this. Y'all are I ain't going to say blessed, but y'all won when y'all got Kubiak. Because we wanted Kubiak to come to Atlanta to run that same offense that we had with Kyle Shanahan. That's what we wanted. But John Elway, his dumb self, messed up and blocked that interview. And that's why we had Dirk Cutter right now. What's good, Jansen? What's good, Maggie T? And he ended up going to Minnesota. Now with Kirk Cousins is I ain't gonna say similar to Matt Ryan. I feel like Matt Ryan to me has over exceeded all expectations from the jump. A lot of people still get this man, they don't get this man credit at all because of the team he's on. Like we don't have a good defense. We never had a good defense with Matt Ryan. Run game has just never been consistent enough. Coaching has always failed us. All right, but the man he's still playing at a high level. You go back to 2018, he matched the number of stats that he had when his MVP season in 2016, and that was with a whole different coordinator under Steve Sarkisian. I just feel like with Kirk Cousins, I feel like he's more of a game manager type of quarterback. I don't see him winning an MVP, but Kubiak is gonna get the best out of him. I think he's gonna get the best out of him more than what Jay Gruden did when he was in Washington.
Well, and here's what I'll say about Kirk Cousins and Kubiak at least. The Vikings offense is more that run first type offense, right? So the problem with that is you have a quarterback that can make those long throws. I think Kirk Cousins is if not top of the league, he's like top 3 in the league in longest plays and plays over 20 yards. So he's able to throw the ball down the field, and we have the weapons to do that. The issue is that the play calling, in some respects, is a lot more conservative to where he's not allowed to open it up. So that's where I feel like if you guys were to end up with Kubiak, you might feel differently about how he plays and how he calls plays. Same with if Matt Ryan was here under our current coaching staff, I don't think he would have some of the gaudy numbers that he does because we're just a lot more conservative. We don't let them rip it open like Matt Ryan's used to.
But when we did it in 2016, we had a dominant run game. So and Matt Ryan still put up a lot of good numbers. It just to me like what I was trying to tell you about Cousins. It's just Kubiak knows the type of quarterback he is. You got to think about the quarterbacks Kubiak had. He had Elway back in the day. He had Matt Schaub, Peyton Manning. he had those type of Brock Osweiler, all those guys. Like he had those type of quarterbacks, so he knows, he knows the strengths and weaknesses of each quarterback, and what he does, he game plans around them. Some coordinators don't do that. Some coordinators they go into business for themselves, and they say, "This is what my game plan is going to be. I don't care about the strengths and weaknesses of the offensive line. I don't care about the strengths and weaknesses of my quarterback. I don't care about establishing a run game. I don't care about all that. This is what we're going to do, and you guys are going to go out there. Y'all better execute it." This is why I don't. That's Dirk Cutter's philosophy right there.
Right.
Kubiak, not so much. Kubiak, he plays off the strengths and weaknesses of his offense. And that's the same thing Kyle Shanahan did. That's the same thing Mike Shanahan did. And that's the same thing I feel like Andy Reid and Sean Payton does as well. So Joe just said, "What's good, man? 2016 and 18 was still running Shanahan playbook, and we ran the ball a lot more than we do now." Yeah, we did run the ball a lot more back then, but just now, under a Dirk Cutter's offense, he do not like to run the ball. As a matter of fact, not only running backs, he don't even get the tight ends involved, and we got Hayden Hurst, which is weird, but hey. But all right, let's get back on topic of George Payton, because I know I could be talking about football all day, man. I just, I'm trying to stay on topic. But yes, but I get it, and that's the thing. The Falcons right now, fans, they want to draft a quarterback, and the problem with that is we have a huge holes on this team. Pass rush.
Mm-hmm.
We have, like I said, the question mark right now with left guard, center, because we don't know what's going to happen with Alex Mack. And then you got to also mention our secondary has been inconsistent as well. But as a DB and DB coach by trade, I feel like those guys are still young and they haven't developed. And you bring in the right coach, they should be fine. That's just my opinion. But going to see what George Payton did, y'all drafted Danielle Hunter. Y'all drafted some other players on the defensive line. Tell me his focus on that part of that position.
Yeah, I mean, it just front office for the Vikings, it has drafted a lot of those guys in the mid rounds that have kind of panned out. I mean, you look at Everson Griffin; he was like a fourth or fifth round pick, I believe. Danielle Hunter was a fourth round pick. Even DJ Wanham this year is having a really solid year with Hunter being out, and he was a mid round pick as well. So I think as long as and I would have a hard time believing that George Payton doesn't follow a very similar philosophy as Rick Spielman, because you don't work together for over a decade if you don't at least are in agreement on a lot of things. So what I think you would get with the George Payton is you'd get a guy that's able to look deeper into some of this talent and be able to kind of pluck it out of those mid rounds and see those kind of expand. And as long as you get a good position coach that can kind of teach some of these guys, you can see some of these raw attributes that we tend to lean towards for some of the trench players like you're talking about. And as long as you can develop that properly, you end up with stars that you picked up in the fourth round.
Thank you. So, and this is what I was going to get to as well. Like, he's been hitting a lot. Now, y'all been hitting a lot on those day two and day three draft picks.
Yeah,
that's important. I mean, I was like let's look at Adam Thielen. I didn't know this man was gonna be this good, but y'all drafted this guy. Like Falcons, we barely hit on day three draft picks outside of Grady Jarrett, which we drafted in the fifth round. And the reason why he fell to the fifth round because of his height.
Right, yeah. And for our side, you look at Stephon Diggs was a fourth round pick. You look at Anthony Harris, I believe, was undrafted free agent. So it's just identifying those traits and being able to coach it up. So I think as long as George Payton can install, if he ends up being your GM, if he can install that coach and that coaching tree that makes sense to develop these players, I think you're going to be more than happy with the results. Because, I mean, if you like what Minnesota has done over the past decade with player development, And I think it's kind of hard to argue that they aren't in top 5 of the league in player development.
Mhm.
I think you'd be more than happy to have George Payton as your next GM.
But I like how y'all. I really like what y'all been doing with player development. Under Mike Zimmer, and then before him, y'all had Leslie Frazier as well, who was a good coach in my opinion. It just y'all just I don't know how management just wanted to fire Leslie like that. I think he didn't get a fair shake up there. But I got somebody on right now. He said, my opinion in history, the reason the Falcons have never won the Super Bowl is because we can't draft defense. Our history has been 80s and offensive focus. But the history, if you go back and you look at the identity of the Falcons in its entirely history, you go back to the 70s, 80s, and even in the 90s, the Falcons was a defensive minded team. We didn't have offense. We didn't really start focusing on offense until we drafted Vic. And Vic brought excitement to the city. And
Right.
then, what happened with him just happened. And then we drafted Matt Ryan. And then Thomas Dimitroff, his mindset was to build an offensive juggernaut in Atlanta. Well, yeah, that's cool and all. And yes, you're going to look good, especially as far as ticket sales. But are you going to get that far? You're not going to get that far if you don't have a good defense.
Yeah, well, it's the old adage, right? Offense wins games, defense wins championships. If you can't make some clutch stops on defense and don't have some playmakers that can disrupt on defense, you're not going to go very far.
Exactly. And that still holds true. But a lot of people sit up here and say, "Well, the league has changed. Everybody want the league has changed. You got to have a dominant offense." No, you don't. Like we've seen teams try to score a lot of points, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't work. It doesn't work because teams figure that out. If
Yeah,
you
all
said
it takes
five,
is one tendency that you key in on, and all of a sudden now your points go from 40 a game to 15.
exactly. You can't just score a lot of points like that. Like look what happened last night with Cleveland and Baltimore. Baltimore is known for having a good defense, but last night, they just you gonna have nights that you just not gonna stop anybody. You gonna have nights that you can't just put up points on the board.
Yep.
I said in my video, I started offense in the late '90s. Yeah, I have been a Falcons fan in the '80s. Barkowski, Jenkins, Jackson, and Miller. That's offense. Yeah, it's my opinion. Love the show done. Gotta go. All right, Dave, man. I appreciate you joining live, man. But going back to George, he's been there for over 13 years now.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around 13 years, and I think George Payton and Rick Spielman were tied together in Miami as well for a couple of years. So they've been together for quite a while.
Yeah, he was down there when they had Nick Saban. Nick
Yep.
Saban, and then they had Ricky Williams. Well, Ricky Williams departed because of the marijuana thing. I remember that crazy fiasco. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so he's been around, and oh man, think about that Miami defense back in the day. Like they had Zach Taylor, and then they had what's the guy name? I forgot his name. It'll come to me, guys. My, yeah, it's early in the morning, but they had a good defense. Miami, I remember they had a good defense back in the day. It's just their offense just wasn't really that good unless it ran through Ricky Williams. But
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the identity for the Falcons has to be more focused in the trenches, establish run game, don't have Matt Ryan do too much, and try to get a top defense. Now, I'm gonna ask you another question. What do you think our focus should be as far as coaching wise? You think we should be bring an offensive minded head coach, or do you think we should bring in a proven defensive minded head coach? Now, here's the thing: before you answer that question, we had Dan Quinn here. Dan Quinn was never proven as a defensive minded guy. He was tied to Pete Carroll in Seattle with that Legion of Boom. That Legion of Boom was pretty much created by Pete Carroll. You go back to when
Mm-hmm.
he was a head coach at USC. Even USC back then had the top defense in college.
I'm going to say I'm going to go completely off the rails here and say you need to find a special teams minded coach that can
A
actually be
John
a
Harbaugh.
true. Yeah, that can actually be a true CEO of the team, like Jim Harbaugh, like Belichick was, like Joe Judge is in New York.
Yeah, I was gonna
Um,
bring him up.
yeah, because a lot of the times, and I think we're seeing that in Minnesota, is you get too entrenched with that in a head coach that they don't really have room to evolve much because they kind of don't have room to focus, and then all the assistant coaches end up being the turnstile a lot of times on that side of the ball. Um, so, in my opinion, you should be searching for someone that's not entrenched in one way or the other and allowing your defensive and offensive coordinators to really make their sides of the ball their sides of the ball and have that head coach be a true CEO of the team, managing all aspects and able to keep an eye on everything, right?
Mm-hmm. I like that philosophy. I really do. 'Cause like you look at John Harbaugh and what he's doing there in Baltimore, that coaching staff is like a machine. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he doesn't micromanage at all. Only thing he need to focus on is situational play calling during the game. All right, that's all he got to focus on. Yeah, you're right because you have, a defensive minded head coach or offensive minded head coach. What they do is they can micromanage, their side of the ball. What they know and they don't see it, they don't like it their way. They force their philosophy on that coordinator.
Right.
And that's what we saw here in Atlanta. We had Marco Emmanuel as our DC in 2017, 2018, and I feel like Dan Quinn didn't allow him to have his own philosophy, call his own scheme on defense, and they fired him because they had to find a scapegoat. So Dan Quinn said, "Well, I'm just gonna call the defense then," and it didn't work the first half of 2019. So he had Raheem Morris move from that wide receiver coaching spot to the DC, and the last half of the season last year, he did allow not Marco Emmanuel, but Raheem Morris to do his own thing. But then when we came into this season, guess what? He micromanaged again, and we went 0-5, and he
Yep.
lost his job.
Well, it's kind of similar in Minnesota. You got Mike Zimmer who calls the plays, and what that does for one is it takes your focus off of, like you said, the game situations that you need to be paying attention to as a head coach. And then for two, because you're so entrenched in one side of the ball, you start to dictate some of the other side. So a lot of our, in my opinion, a lot of our offensive philosophy in Minnesota is kind of dictated by the conservative play that Zimmer wants to run because he wants to protect leads. He wants to put his defense in good situations on the clock, so that's where you get a lot of the heavy run directives that the Vikings have. I mean, yeah, we have Dalvin Cook and a good O line, but some situations it doesn't make sense, and we're still doing it. So, um, yeah, in my opinion, I think you got to get one of those guys that is not on either side of the ball, and he can just be like a John Harbaugh, like you said, and just let the two sides run the way they need to run.
My question is, okay, I I really don't know. Uh, Other than the special teams coach in Cincinnati right now, I may do a coaching video out of him. Um, don't steal my idea for the people who watching. And I know some people watching they stealing my content. I'm being dead serious, by the way. And I'm not even gonna mention his name. Y'all gotta do y'all research yourselves. Anyway, that's the only person because I know the special team coach in Cincinnati has been doing a great job and he's been there for years. So, other than that, I feel like, far as like the identity of the team, we got to go defense. Like you look at the division we in right now, the Saints, um, Matt Rule, coming from Baylor, and I feel like he's doing a good job with the rebuild in Carolina. And then you have Tampa Bay right now, who, not they not doing bad, but the expectations before the season started was really high for them. They saying, "Oh, they gonna win the NFC." They're gonna make. I feel like they still make the playoffs, but they're not gonna go that far in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So, and they got to really figure out what they're going to do with that quarterback spot because I feel like Brady he should just stay in New England. He was more protected there. He knew the system well. Bruce Arians, he's having him do way too much. That's the problem. He can't do that much. He's too old. So, but do you think George Payton is going to leave Minnesota? Because we said that yes, he did interview for the Browns GM spot last year. He interviewed
Mm-hmm.
twice. And he told them, "No, I'm good. I'm staying in Minnesota." So, do you think this time he'll try to leave and become his own be a general manager for a team?
I mean, I feel like he wants to. I feel like he wants to try out his own hand at being a GM. So I think it's just waiting for the right situation, and maybe that is the Falcons because they have enough pieces in place, whereas the Browns didn't necessarily have the same kind of setup. I don't know what the cap space is for you guys going into next year,
It's
but
not good. It's not good. It's not good. That's why I said like we need to bring in a GM who knows how to draft players and develop them. That's what we need. We cannot focus on the free agency at least another couple of years.
yeah. So I mean, I think maybe part of the problem with the Browns is kind of their ownership has kind of seemed like it's a little bit squirrely. So there might have been some friction there where he didn't really have faith that the ownership was going to be hands off. Um, and no, I don't know if that's the case in Atlanta, but if the comfort level is there, I think he's hungry for his chance. And I think if you're worried about the cap situation, definitely a great person to have because if you look at the Minnesota front office, we've generally been really good about taking care of contracts. We take care of guys early on rookie deals so we can get them for cheaper and we can get more team friendly deals on the books. So I think he could handle all those things fairly well for you guys. It's just a matter of is he comfortable with the team situation, the ownership situation, more so than he is with the Vikings, and staying where he's at and where he's been comfortable the last decade.
Okay. I think with Arthur Blank, he's not hands on like a lot of owners in the league. You know, you got Jerry Jones, you got Mike Brown out there in Cincinnati. You have shoot even um the Rams owner Stan Kroenke. He's hands on a lot too. Arthur
Mm-hmm.
Blank is really not that much. He try to put his trust into his GM, into the head coach, and have them, go out there and try to win games for him. But right now I can tell he's highly irritated because he know he put in a lot of stock in this and spending a lot of money in his team, building the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium downtown, and it's not being filled to capacity because of the product we have on the field. And that's because of, to be honest with you, it is the general manager drafting players that doesn't fit our system. For example, I said this to somebody yesterday. We drafted Duke Riley, the linebacker for the Eagles. We drafted him. He did not pan out well here in London. Going up there to Minnesota, is he playing like a Pro Bowler? No. All right. But is he serviceable for their team? Yes, he is. And that's the thing for the Falcons. This has been the problem with the Falcons ever since Tom Dimitroff. He drafted players that doesn't pan out at all. We drafted Matt Ryan, we drafted Julio Jones, we drafted Grady Jerry, we drafted Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, just a few. But he really, if you look at each year consistently, did he hit on at least 50 or 60% of his draft picks? Can't really say that. And it's hard for some teams. It's hard, and most teams don't hit on 60%. But if you can get
Mm-hmm.
close to that margin, you won your draft. You won your draft. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on there. I think that's part of the reason why I think the Vikings have had such success with their draft picks is they're fully understanding, or at least they're trying their best to understand what the coaches are looking for, what attributes they're looking for, what systems are coming from, where they see them playing going forward. So um, I would have to believe if you guys get George Payton, you're going to get a much better um, tying into what your coaches are looking for. You might not see it in the first couple of years, but if that coach and GM tandem, the longer they work together, the more data they can get on. Okay, this is what you're looking for. This is what you're looking for. Okay, we think this guy's the guy. Even though he might seem like a reach to a lot of people or a lot of the draft pundits, that might be the perfect guy that you need on your system.
And another thing about George I like too is he's very analytical. He works in y'all. I think he heads y'all analytical department when looking at data like with the trends in the league. He follows
Mm-hmm.
the trends because guess what? That right there is important. Yes, it's good to watch tape, and you're supposed to watch tape, but you also need to see what's going on in the league, how your team's looking right now. What do you need to do to make your team better?
Yep. Yep. That the huge evolution piece, right? Just seeing where the data is going, where all the trends are going, trying to stay ahead of that, or at least in 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 tandem with it, to stay on top of the trends.
All right. All right, and
Yep.
like I said, it, and I like that. I like what you just said about George too. About he talks to the coaches and have a conversation with them on what type of player do he need to get, do he need to scout for in the draft, and that's really important because I feel like with Thomas Dimitrov when he was here, I don't think he really had a conversation with the coach, with Dan Quinn or Mike Smith. Mike Smith, I feel like I don't know if he really talked to Thomas about what players he needed. Because even off the blank, he even said it that when Mike Smith was here, he just said, "Well, just get the best players available." Sounds good and all, but you have a system here in place that you're supposed to be running.
Mm-hmm.
As I saying, you getting a round block and you trying to fit it into a star hole, it's not gonna work. So
Yeah.
I like that about
Exactly.
I like that about George. So he's communicating with his coaching staff on what players do we need to get, do what do we need to scout for, so that way when we on the clock, okay, we know what we need to get.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And I think you see evidence of that, right? When Kubiak came in, that's when we started drafting these more athletic offensive linemen, and the whole scheme shift was to this zone blocking offense versus a man blocking, which we had prior, which you want beefier guys and not quite as athletic. And you see that shift. The corners, the second Zimmer stepped in, we started going for more of these press corners. These guys that can be man up because that's what Zimmer wanted, right? So I think, like we've been talking about here for the last 5 minutes or so, it's that pairing and that communication is huge.
Yeah.
And I can only assume that's going to continue if George Payton ends up being a GM somewhere.
All right. Well, I hope the Falcons do interview this man. I feel like he's on the list of GMs I think we need to look at. My first is Joe Ortiz from Baltimore. He's been there since Ozzie Newsome in '98. Another person, Jeff Ireland, the assistant GM in New Orleans, and then George Payton that I like is, he's been there for 12 years, and I've seen you guys, you know, roll out a lot of good talent, you know, where we just been mentioning it for the past 40 minutes. But yes, one more question before we end up, and this is off George Payton. This is on Clint Kubiak, our quarterback coach. Um, do you feel like he's ready to be an offensive coordinator in the league?
It's so hard to ping that down because how much of it is the father Kubiak versus the son Kubiak on some of the stuff. I don't know. It's worth a shot. Maybe he might have some innovative ideas that he wants to try that he really can't because Gary Kubiak's in charge and he can't really flex much of that. But I mean, he saw Kevin Stefanski. He started out as quarterbacks coach, and he's doing pretty well there in Cleveland. I mean, that offense is doing pretty well. So it would be hard pressed to say that yes, Clint Kubiak is ready to be an offensive coordinator, but again, we've seen it happen before, where one of these position coaches goes on and they have massive success. Like you look at Matt LaFleur in Green Bay.
Exactly. I think
So it just sometimes they pop, sometimes they don't, and you don't know until you take a chance.
exactly. Well, I think Clint Kubiak should be an offensive coordinator. I've have been looking at his resume, and I'm like, he's still young, but at the same time, I feel like he come if the Falcons do, you know, whoever they hire as a head coach, because you're still gonna need, even if you draft, if you're not draft, even if you hire offensive minded head coach, you're still gonna need an offensive coordinator. So I think the Falcons should look more into him. I know we couldn't get Gary, but we can get Clint. We can get Clint.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's maybe like I said, maybe he just wants to get out of Dad's shadow and make something of his own. So
exactly. All right. Well, hey man, I appreciate you coming on the show, man, talking about George. I hope the Falcons and have him on the radar to interview. I know we've just been hearing a lot about Louis Riddick and the OGM for the Texans, but I feel like they got to make this right. They got to make this GM hire right this time. Like they got to make the right
mm-hmm.
hire. They don't make the right hire, then in the next few years, we go losing seasons back to back to back. They got to blow everything up, and I
Yep,
hate
and then
that.
you're back at square one again.
Yeah, and I hate that for Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. The players that we have here, who are worthy enough to, get to another Super Bowl and win it this time. So, but hey, it is what it is. But thank you again, once again. Let everybody know who you are, where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again. Again, my name is Ed Brodmarkie, co-host of the Soldiers podcast. You can check us out on dailynorseman.com, all the podcast sites where you normally listen to podcasts. Yeah, it's been great talking with you, and look forward to being on again.
Yes, and I trust and believe when we play you guys again, I will have you on. Not only that, vice versa, you can bring me on y'all platform and I'll talk Falcons football as well. Thank you again. Also, thanks for everybody who's watching this live this afternoon. Appreciate it. If you're watching this at a later time, let us know your thoughts on George Paton. Do you think the Falcons should interview this guy? Do you think no, we good? We just need to just bring in Louis Riddick, or say I don't know who George Paton is. Hey, if you don't know who he is, watch the video. All right, watch the video before you start coming to my mentions criticizing me on what I'm doing. All right, so. Hey, if you're new to the channel, y'all already know what to do. Hit that subscribe button. Also, hit that like button. Share this content out of Atlanta Sports Fanatics. And hit us up in the comment section. As always, come holler at your hometown sports podcast. Your boy, The Dunn, with another episode of The Dunn's Favor. Y'all have a great day. Be safe. Don't forget to wear your mask.